Welcome back everyone, welcome to Monarcho Studio. In today's course, we'll be designing the Rabbit R1. This is an AI device and it's been relatively popular around the internet as of late. So we got our general file as per usual. Let's try something different. I'm going to delete the light, delete the camera, and let's keep the cube. I hear that sometimes you should keep the cube and try to make things with it. Let's turn on screencast. I like to make sure that everyone can follow me concisely and it's understandable. So this is our cube. If I click number 1 on our number pad, we get face view. Perfect. So what I recommend doing is getting one of these images from Google, and these will work perfectly. You can save image. Now let's add our image. There it is. We got our image. We want to scale it down just a little bit, not too much. And we'd like to center it best as possible, which is not too easy to do. Press G, Z, and scroll it up. Same thing with the cube, G, Z, bring that up just a little bit. So what we want to do with our cube is tab in and scale this down to a similar size to the device. Around there, tab out, click on the image and reposition it a little. Now that's looking better. That's actually looking better. And save your file. Control Alt save. So I've got my file saved, I've got my blueprint, I've got my cube. Perfect. Let's get our blueprint a little bit closer to us. We can even size this down just a little bit. It's only a guide for now. Let's go back to our cube. Let's come out of X-ray mode. With this cube, we want to scale it down. We want to scale it along the y-axis, kind of like that. And we don't want to scale it too much, but around there, maybe a little bit more. The Rabbit R1 is not particularly a thick device. It's actually what you might call perfect size, you know? Perhaps a little bit thicker than an iPhone, but it's not a super thick device. So I think that will do for now. Let's turn back on X-ray mode and let's save our document, tab in, and let's go to edge select. Select our edges. First thing we want to do is to bezel our edges. So press Ctrl B and bezel our edges. We can bezel it like that. We can create a completely new device, or we can use our scroll on the mouse and we can add a few different loops. So let's add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 looks pretty good. How about 7? 7 looks perfect, almost perfectly refined, just to make sure it's not too wide or it's not too narrow. Just want to get it on that edge, and that might do. Save your document. Remember to save often. Then as we tab in, we can select this entire loop, Shift Alt, and select the rear as well, and we can bezel these edges. Again, this device is it's actually kind of sharp at the edge. It's not super rounded. So I just want to add probably 1, probably 2, and that's about it. That is really about it. We don't want too much more. What if we now add a shade smooth, auto shade smooth, Control 2 to subdivide. That looks pretty damn good. That looks pretty damn good. So that is the first thing out of the way. Now what we'd like to do is to duplicate this device. Let's duplicate that, right click, tab in, and we can scale it down for the screen. And exactly what we're going to do with the screen, actually, you can already see it's not particularly liking that. You can see it's almost as if the image and our proportions don't perfectly align. So if I bring that out, is it still the same? How about if we bring that up? Is it still the same? It's not too bad, but I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll delete that and we'll add a completely new cube. Let's bring this cube up. Let's scale it down. Let's bring it up a little bit more. Probably need to scale it up just a little bit, not too much at all. Scale it along the y-axis and bring that out. Not bad at all. Tab in, click number 1 to select these vertices. Press G, X, and drag them along the left hand side so it lines up with the barriers of the screen. And we want to select edge select, select these edges, go all the way around, select these edges, Control B, and bezel these. And get these bezeled. We don't want to bezel it too little. We don't want to bezel it too much. We want to get it just around where the borders are. Add about 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. About 7 vertices. Get it around there and right click. Perfect. Save that. So now we could potentially shade smooth. We're not going to subdivide because then it messes up the model. Undo that, Control C. We can actually add a boolean. By clicking the main Rabbit device, we can actually add a boolean. Add a boolean where it says object right here. We can click on that to select the second cube. Cube 001. Select that one. And that should add a boolean. So now if we press H, kind of messes up our model. Why does that happen? So I believe that happens because we have a subdivision on this model. So if we click on the main model, go back, cancel that subdivision, there you go. Problem solved. And we can bring back our second cube. So, good. Number 1 on our number pad, Alt X. I've set up my X-ray to Alt X. You can always go to your X-ray button, right click, remove shortcut, and change it, set a new shortcut, and you can choose the keys. You can choose whatever keys that works best for you. Neat little trick in Blender. So let's click our second cube. Let's try to duplicate this. We did this already, but we have no idea if it'll work now. Tab in and scale this down. We have no idea if this will work now, but have nothing to lose also. So it's might as well we give this a go. Let's bring this out of the device. Tab in. There we go. Select all of this. Carry it along the right hand side. Well, not too much. Select half of those. GX, carry it along the right hand side. You can see the edges kind of need a bit more work. They need a bit more bezeling. So it's almost as if we need to create another cube from scratch. We don't have to, but you know, to get the best detail, let's go ahead and do that. Let's delete. Let's add a new cube. Let's scale that down. Let's bring it around there just to get it lined up. Get it lined up just a bit more. Tab in, scale along the z-axles just a little bit like that. Scale along the x-axles. Just want to center it so it looks relatively good. That looks pretty good. Let's save that right there. Let's bring it out of the device just a little bit. Well, actually, this goes all the way through. So actually, we want to scale along the y-axis because this goes all the way through the device. Yes, if you can see right there, it's actually fully cut out. Similar thing with this. So now that we've got that cube, we can go back into X-ray mode and we can actually duplicate that cube and bring it up. Perfect. Tab in, scale this down along the z-axis and just press GZ to bring this down just a little bit. Scale it a little bit more until it fits. They're both kind of like cut through. Go into X-ray mode, let's select the edges and we'll begin bezeling these. Let's begin bezeling these, right? So number 1 on a number pad and then Control B and we can bezel. There we go. Now that's looking pretty good. You see, if we do it too much, then it gets a little bit messy. So we really want to get it on the edge. Not too much, not too wide, but not too narrow. That's about right. Tab out, shade smooth. Similar thing with this. Let's select all of those edges. Number 1 on a number pad, Control B. Look at that. That's actually working quite good. That should do perfect around there. Tab out. Same thing, shade smooth, save document. Now with our main device, we can add more booleans. Let's add 2 more booleans. Now with these 2 new booleans, we can add this one. And with the third, we can add this one. Save those. Remember to always keep saving your file. If I hide those, but the moment I'd like to add a subdivision, it will mess up the complete model. There we go. So just keep that in mind. There might be many ways to fix that issue, but as for now, we're working with what we have. So I've hidden the Boolean devices. Actually, quick question, just as an experiment, if we were to apply these Booleans, just out of curiosity, let's delete these because we don't need them anymore. What happens if I add the subdivision now? Does it still mess up the model? Yes, it still messes up the model. What if I remove auto shade smooth? What if I add the subdivision now? Does it still mess up the model? Yes, it does. So just wanted to clarify that. I thought I might just try it just in case. Let's hide these cubes. So I'll just undo everything, Control Z to undo those steps, and now we can continue. So as you can see, there is a little camera, there's a camera inside, and around the camera, there's like a little cover. So looking at it from the side, that is what it looks like. There's even a little glass on the other side. There's even a little glass on the other side. But this button right here, we need to see if we can have a boolean for that as well. So this side button right there. Okay, no problem. Let's click number 3 on our number pad. Let's add a circle. Go down to the left hand side. Let's bring down the vertices to around, say, 18. Let's go to align to view. Perfect. And then we can tab in, scale this down, move this up just a little bit. Click number 1 on the number pad. Go into X-ray mode. G, X, move this along the right hand side. G, Z, bring this up a little bit more. And because we've already tabbed in, we can scale this down a little bit more. G, Z, move this up a little bit more. That's looking rather good. So what if we were to then extrude this along the x-axis? Alt left click to click this circle to select the entire edge, and we can extrude that as well on the x-axis. Then we can press F to fill face. With this side, we can also press F to fill face. Right click, shade auto smooth. And if we wanted to, we could duplicate the edges. Yeah, well, not duplicate actually, just press Control B, and we can add a bezel to the edge. And this would be rather useful. That'll do. And let's do the same thing with there. If we add a little bezel right there, that will actually be useful. And as you can see, this sort of goes all the way through. And it's a lot slimmer. It's a little bit slimmer, kind of like that. And it goes all the way through. So select the left hand side, bring this through. Select everything, scale this down. Select everything on the right hand side. Let's bring this out just a little bit. Select those. Well, we can actually add a loop cut right here if we'd like. And this loop cut, we can actually bring this inwards. These ones right here, we can actually then scale this up. There we go. If we wanted to, we can add another one right there, and we can then scale this down if we wanted to. That's always a possibility. Now, if we did Control 2 to add a subdivision, you can see it doesn't actually look too bad. And that's mostly because we've added these bezels to the edges. But the question is, will we be able to add a boolean? That's where the difficulty lies. Now right here, if we tab in, we can actually add an edge loop right there to make this look a bit more simplistic. Click number 1, X-ray mode. Let's select everything right there. GX, bring this out just a little bit. Well, maybe not too much actually, because I think it's more reliant on that boolean that we need to add. So let's add another boolean. Now that we have another boolean, let's click on the new circle that we have. Kind of messes up our model though. A convincing hole on both sides. That's not bad, but it messes up our model a little bit. And I'm not a fan of that. So if I remove auto shade smooth, could that fix the problem? Nope, actually made it worse. So perhaps if we bring this up, is just a theory. What happens if we bring this one up? Does that fix the problem? Shade flat. Well, actually, if it's shade flat, that does fix the problem, but only on the exterior. On the interior, it's an absolute mess. So maybe what we ought to do is to apply the original booleans. Let's get those apply. So we're only working with the new boolean, and be careful not to apply the wrong boolean, like the circle. We want to keep that one. Let's apply the original cube. Let's apply the other cube. Perfect. This leaves the circle. So if I delete that, it removes the circle. Perfect. So that's the issue that we're having. Now, if I clicked inside and I scale this within, could that help to fix the problem? No, it does not. What if we shade smooth? Then the problem moved to the exterior. What if we just normal shade smooth? Nothing seems to work. What if we converted this to mesh? Did that just fix the problem? What happened to the problem? If we convert it, okay, that's interesting. Can you see? It's already shade flat. By clicking shade flat a few more times, it sort of fixes the problem. Interesting. So it's the auto shade smooth that's creating a little bit of problem for us. How interesting. How ironic that the inside is not even something that should bother us too much. So what if we applied this? Then auto shade smooth still has a problem. So let's go back and click auto shade smooth. What if we then apply this? These are what we're left with. So I kind of want to dissolve this entire face. Can we delete this entire face? That seemed to work. Select number 2, select this face and fill. Maybe not so easy. We're not out of the woods yet. What if you feel like that? So with this, I think I see the problem. So with some of these, we can probably help ourselves by using the knife tool to add some cuts. We can actually add some cuts. And I'm not saying this will fix the problem entirely, but it certainly might help. Back to our model. Simple solution to this problem. Obviously, the auto shade smooth is applied, and we also have a boolean. Now, what we can do is tab in and add some loop cuts. One right there, bring this out, one right here, and bring this out just a little bit. And that fixes the problem. In fact, it looks like it has a subdivision modifier without having a subdivision modifier. And we can probably go ahead and apply this final boolean. That is perfect. That is actually perfect, and it works fairly well. The only thing I'd say is we might need to bring this down a little bit so it looks in place. Like the size of this thing, we might need to just bring that down just a little bit. So let's bring the size down a little bit. Let's select these vertices on the left hand side. Let's press G, X, drag them along, keep them there. What I'm trying to do is to give the illusion that there is an indent, right there. That's what I'm trying to give the solution of, and for the most part, it's worked well. Now, the amazing thing is that we do have our blueprints. So there's the camera, and the camera is somewhat similar. It's basically a circle with a dot right there. Let's add a camera cover. There's a glass, and then there's the border. So let's add the border. Let's select this edge loop right there. Got that edge loop selected. We can then duplicate this and scale this down just a little bit. Extrude this and press S to scale this within. And we're doing this on medium point. If you go at the top to the pivot point, it's on the medium point. Keep scaling this down just a little bit. Scale this along the x-axis a little bit. Scale it along the z-axis just a little bit. You can see the edge is right there. Just scale this out just a little bit. That should do perfectly. And if we click one of these vertices and press, we can then extrude. And we can extrude behind also. So it's like that. And with this, press L, select one of these vertices, press L, press P, separate. Separate this piece, shade smooth. It's not wanting to shade smooth, so let's add a subdivision. If we add a subdivision, it completely messes everything up. So with these edges, we want to bezel them. So like this one, we want to bezel this edge, but only a small amount. So don't add too much bezel at all. So that's actually okay right there. Then we can duplicate it and bring it back. So it's brought like out there just a little bit. Perfect. So it's not extruded, but it's kind of like almost on the edge. Quite nice actually. and then there's a glass to cover this part. So let's press G, Y, bring this in just a little bit, not too much at all. Again, select this edge loop, duplicate, press G, Y, bring this forward just a little bit, press P to separate. Want to separate this piece at least for now. Press A to select all vertices and F to fill. Now that will be the glass. That'll be the glass right there. Added a subdivision and we brought up the viewport to around 4. I think 2 is fine, but I was using 4 and it actually looks quite good. Now, to be honest, on the rear, on the back, I'm not entirely sure if there's a glass for the camera on the rear, but I'm just not entirely sure. But what we can do for now is that we can add the glass anyway, and all we have to do is to duplicate that. But before we can do that, we want to scale this glass up. You can see if we scale, it's going to be scaling based on the origin point. So press right click, set origin to geometry, and then zoom in, tab in, and then we can scale to the edges. Perfect. And then we can essentially duplicate this. Press 3 on our number pad, tab in, X-ray mode, Shift D, X, Shift D and wide, and bring this to the rear. Kind of like that. Probably bring it out just a little bit more. And I haven't even separated them. I've just kept them the same, as sort of like just the same for now. Perfect. Now we can add that little camera right there. Interestingly, that camera is like a circle, so let's go to side view, through on our number pad, press add a circle. We already got the vertices at 19, put on world view, perfect, and duplicate that circle. We might need 2 circles. With the first circle, tab in, scale down, scale it all the way down, press G, Z, bring that up there. So that might be our camera. That might be our camera. Press G, X, bring this along the right hand side. Press G, Z, bring this up. Press E to extrude. I want to extrude along the x-axis. Press A to select all and scale down just a little bit. Well, actually it's not too bad. Probably move it up just a little bit. Yeah, just move it up just a little bit. Scale it up. That's looking relatively good. And of course, we want to fill that face right there and bezel it. Doesn't have to add too much bezels, maybe 3 or 4. Fill that face again and bezel it. Perfect. Now with that, we can actually subdivide if we wanted to. Yeah, so let's actually subdivide. Auto shade smooth. If we came out of X-ray mode, we can actually hide these. We can actually hide these temporarily. Click on our camera, add 1 loop right there, press Ctrl B, and now we can have as much loop as we want, but I believe we only need 2, probably around there. We just want to get the camera. Let's try that again. Ctrl B. There we go. That'll work. That will work. Press 3, number pad, select these faces, just these faces. Perfect. Press I to insert. Once we got those right there, then we can press I to insert. Click right click, go to loop tools, and let's add a circle. Then we can press S to scale that circle in whichever direction we want. So obviously in X-ray mode, we want to probably scale it down just a little bit, because after all, this is the camera. Rotate a little bit, press G, Z, bring this up just a little bit. Now for the loop tool that I got, I believe you have to go into preference to activate loop tools. There we go, get extensions, and you can add the loop tools. Once again with that, insert once again, and press G, Y, bring this inwards, insert once again, and press G, Y, bring this outwards, and insert once again. That is essentially our camera. That's not too bad, but perhaps we want to insert for the eyeball effect of the camera. That looks a little bit good. That looks relatively good. You can see with these vertices, we might need to do something about them for them to make a bit more self. Probably use the knife tool to connect them a little bit more. That's looking a little bit better, a little bit more friendlier, certainly. Similar with these, if we wanted to, actually, we don't want to mess this up too much. Don't want to mess this up too much at all. Probably just one right there. It's not the worst. It's not the worst I've seen. With this edge right there, we might need to bring this out. Might need to bring that out just a little bit. So our camera is done. We can bring back some of these, some of our cubes, and of course our glass right there. Now we got our second circle. It's a similar thing. Tab in, scale this down just a little bit and move it up just a little bit. Move it to the right hand side just a little bit around there. Extrude and extrude along the x-axis. Perfect. Select all and scale this down. Scale it down just a little bit. Scale it along the x-axis a little bit more. Perfect. And then you can see with these edges we can fill and bezel, but we actually want to bezel a little bit more than usual because you can see there's it actually has quite an impressive amount of bezel right there. Same thing on this side. Fill and bezel on that side as well. Perfecto. And by the looks of this thing, it's probably scaled out. Remember to, with this one, remember to set the origins to geometry, and it looks like it might need to be scaled out just a little bit like that. Tab in, select all, and probably scale down. Scale along the x-axis, not too much, but just a little bit. There we go. And shade smooth. How's that look? Add a subdivision. Perfect. That's looking good. By the way, if these edges are a little bit too sharp, we can always add subdivision modifier to these edges if we wanted to. If that's looking a little bit too sharp, you can always bezel it a little bit. You don't have to bezel this too much. Just add a few. So it's not as sharp. Just a few like that, and that's not too bad. Similar thing with this actually. If you wanted to, you could actually bezel that. You don't have to bezel it too much, just a little bit. And again, that looks pretty good. How is that looking? So now we need our screen. We need a screen. With that circle right there, you can click any of these and you can essentially duplicate that. Separate it for now. Tab out and select the new circle. And what we can do is we can simply just press F to fill. There we go. That's looking pretty good. What we can do when we tab in, we can actually extrude either outwards or inwards. Just extrude inwards just a little bit. And the key thing with this edge right here, again, we can add a little bit of a bezel for both sides. Just a little bit of a bezel if we wanted to. Not much at all. Auto shade smooth and subdivide. And you can see there's a little bit of a gap. Well, with some of them, not all of them, but it's almost like a little bit of a gap. So if we tab in, select all, we can scale it down just a little bit. So there's a bit of a gap. Actually, try it again. Scale it along the x-axis a little bit, scale it along the z-axis a little bit. Not too much at all. Scale it up a little bit. We don't want it to, we really want to be rather gentle with the gap. The gap is almost just a nuance. That is almost it. We're almost there. What about the back of the device? Right there. There's like a mesh. There's a little bit of a mesh. Yeah. So perhaps we need to create a little bit of a cutout. What if we select the rear and what if we scale this down? Let's get this SVG and let's rotate it. And let's rotate it on the z-axis 180 degrees. Let's scale it up a little bit and let's just put it above our device around there. Doesn't have to be perfectly aligned, but we want it to be in place somewhat. That's pretty damn perfect. Let's get ourselves a new plane. Let's rotate it along the x-axis. Let's rotate it 90 degrees along the x-axis. Let's scale this down, move this over here, and let's scale this on the z-axis. We can reduce this just a little bit. It's like a doorway. We just need it to fit around there. Perfect. Actually, let's add some loop cuts around these areas. Let's add a couple of loop cuts right there with these edge vertices. I'm going to try to bezel them. Control B and V. Perfect. Select all, merge by distance. We get rid of 8 vertices that were a little bit unnecessary. Remember to save your work, and then with this now we can press G, Y, bring this back. If we tab in, then we can subdivide. We need to connect some of these pieces right there. Let's get those connected. I recommend using the knife tool. Super simple way to learn how to use a knife tool nice and effectively. Okay, nice. Select all once again, right click and subdivide. We got some more faces to connect, so let's use this tool. Let's continue to connect some of these faces. Excellent. So once you got some of those connected, we can then subdivide once again. Subdivide once again. And now that we got face select, we can highlight some of these faces to get some of these selected. Perfect. Let's go to the top of the select button. Let's click check or deselect. Perfect. Probably click check or deselect again. No, first time it was great. And extrude inwards. So this is going to create a mesh system. And with this now, we can even subdivide. So we can press Control 2 to subdivide by 2. And that will get added to the modifiers tab. Then we can shade smooth. Shade other smooth. Perfect. We got our speaker at the rear. So based on this device, looks like we have a few other areas that we could also add a couple of boolean. So like on the left hand side, these look like USB charging ports. So let's go ahead and do that. So that's mostly on this side for some USB charging ports. So let's add a cube. Let's scale this cube down, move it up, shift it to the left hand side, scale it within the y-axis. You can see it is vertical. Both of these are vertical. Perfect. Scale it a bit more on the y-axis, scale it on the z-axis, scale it a bit more on the z-axis, and a bit more on the z-axis, a bit more on the y-axis. Perfect. And with this, we're going to duplicate that, bring that one underneath. With the first one, we're going to separate that. With everything selected, we actually want the edge select. Let's go for the edge select and let's bezel this. With this one, what we need to do is to go to Object at the top. Let's go to Apply and let's apply the scales. Once we tab in once again, we can then bezel this and you can see the scales are applied. Nicely done. Actually, we can probably delete this one. As an example, we'll do the same with this one. We'll go to Apply, Apply Scales, tab in, select these edges, Control B, and we can bezel them, but it's bezeled on scale. I just noticed we might have to make these a little bit thicker on the y-axis. Perhaps a bit more. Perfect, that'll work. Now we need more booleans. We need more booleans for our design. So let's get that boolean added. Let's get the second boolean for that one. And now if we hide these, it should work theoretically. Works kind ofly. I think with this one we might need to bring this one out just a little bit. So I don't want it to be extruded on the inside. Not for this example. I think I see what the problem is. It's because it's not exactly thick enough on the inside. That's all right. We can fix that. So yeah, booleans are set. So yeah, we can hide those if we want. What we'll do is we'll get those booleans applied. Perfect. We'll move these out. What we'll do is we'll get one of these faces. We'll duplicate this, press P to separate, press G and X and move this inwards. and then set origins to geometry. Perfect. Select all and scale within. And then with this face, we can actually even delete this face if we wanted to. We can press G, X, move it backwards a little bit. Then we can delete this face if we wanted to. We can even scale this down just a tiny amount, not too much at all. With this face, you could probably even extrude this insert and move this one back just a bit. With this one, similar thing, get this face duplicated, move this along the x-axis, P to separate, G, X, move this along as well. But this one is supposed to just be on the exterior mostly. And then we can scale this down. Let's apply the scales with this one. I think we can move this one inwards just a bit, not too much, just to show that there is something there. Perfect. Let's hide that image. I believe that is our device. Might need to do a little bit of work at the back because you can see there's some sort of warp right there that I'm not too liking. So we can add a cut. Perfect. Got that little cut added. Let's add some more cuts around there. I just want the geometry to make sense for the most part. So we're just adding some cuts so that our geometry makes sense. Let's add one right there. That one is just begging for one. We can also add one right there for sure. Perfect. You can see it's helped to reduce that issue that we were having. Now with the face selected, might need to get back our image because there's the glass and then there is the display. You can see there's the border and then there's the actual display. So I'm not sure if this image will show that much, but we might need to just press 3 for face, select. I believe that's the face we got selected. And then actually, you know what? Let's apply the scales and let's tab back in. Then if we reduce this, it should move with the scale. We can't reduce it too much because of those edges. But then actually if we insert, then we can scale this down, I believe. Perfect, without affecting the edges. So this should almost, let's actually duplicate this. Let's bring this back. This will be our actual screen. Let's separate. So that will be a glass and then that'll be a screen. Perfect. So this will be the glass. The one behind, that'll be the screen. That behind will be the screen. Looks like we're ready to add some materials. So let's go ahead and add some materials. We're going to add all of the materials and a lovely background also. Let's begin by adding a plane. Rotate this plane on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Scale this plane up and move it back just a little bit and move it up out of the ground a bit more. Perfect. So with this plane, it's going to be a gradient background. We're going to open up another screen on the left-hand side. We're going to add a camera. Press 0 on the left-hand side. Okay, that doesn't seem to be working. So let's go up at the top, show our gizmo. Apparently it's C. Press C and that would show us our camera. Now we're getting a perspective from our camera view. So from the top of our model, we can rotate this camera, not too much, and then we can carry this back just a little bit. Press GZ, move this up a little bit. RX, rotate this a little bit. And GY, bring this back. Bring this down somewhere around there. Perfect. And let's scale this out just a little bit. Let's save all of that. Perfect. Now we can go to our shader. We can go to our shader screen. Perfect. With this material, we can add a new material. Perfect. We want a color ramp. Perfect. Connect the color to the base color. With the color ramp, we can then press Control T and we can add a few more things. A texture coordinator, mapping, and image texture. So this is what's going to help us create our gradient. And for most part, we want some of it to be gray, and we want the other part to be a little bit lighter. So if we go into render, we may need to add some lighting. Let's add an area light around there. Let's bring that back where the camera is. Let's rotate that on the x-axis. Might need to turn this up also. Another thing, we need to change the render and engine to cycles. Now with our light unit, we do need to turn that up, perhaps around 500. So that's what it looked like from that perspective. We might need to rotate this based on 3D cursor, rotate this along that side. Perfect. We can duplicate another one and we can rotate this along the other side. Perfect. And save those. So with our material at the back, then we can try this out to see like what sort of colors is working for us. So we've got blue, and if we move up the opacity, then you can see it changes color. And that's the control of the white right there. That is the control of the white. So what we'll do is turn this opacity down. I really want to see where it's being affected. Looks like it's being affected all across the board. So something that we want to do is we want to change the directions of our colors. Let's go to the rotations on the y-axis. Let's change this to 45. Another thing as well, we might just get rid of this because I think this is affecting our model. Okay, there we go. So that's coming down from that angle. That's interesting how that works. What if we adjusted all of these a bit more? Okay, let's bring this down a little bit, probably around 20. Nice. Now I want the top to be somewhat of a lighter gray tone, and we can bring this out kind of like that. We need to revert this hue back to 0, saturation to 0. Let's turn this gray all the way down. It looks like we can change the interpolation to ease. There's also B-spline, constant, linear, cardinal, and ease. I tend to like ease. Put another one right there and probably just turn down the opacity just a little bit like that. Let's get it closer to each other. Nice. And that is what we're working with. Let's go back to solid mode. Let's go back to our layout. For now, we want to add a empty. This will be useful. Let's add a cube. Let's scale this cube down, scale it up a little bit, and move it up a little bit. Perfect. Scale it within, scale it along on the X. Perfect. Move it all up along the Z. That's pretty good. Go to X-ray mode, select everything you see right there, and deselect everything like that. Select that, and then we're going to parent this. So let's parent this like that. So it's not parented to the empty, so it moves with the empty. So if we wanted to animate this, this would be fairly simple. Nice. This is perfect. Another thing we want to do, we want to tab in, select these faces right there, and duplicate this and move it back just a little bit, not too much, and separate it, because this is supposed to be our black screen, and it's supposed to be a little bit glossy. So we're going to turn down the roughness a little bit, change the color to a darker color. Let's turn this into glass. Let's just call it glass 02. We might need different types of glass. Go to the surface modifier and use a glass BSDF. Perfect. Let's turn down the roughness on that glass just a little bit. And another thing, if we go into our render tab, we can turn on GPU for device compute. The sampling viewport, we can actually turn this down quite a bit to around maybe 250. Then we can add our first color to our device. So remove that material. Let's add a orange color to our device. It's quite a deep orange, kind of like that. Maybe a bit more red. It's quite a deep orange. Let's turn down the roughness just a little bit so it's a little bit glossy. We can actually go to the material view. That's looking pretty good. And with these ones as well, those ones are the same material. You can see that's how the material look. Even the camera on the inside, similar material. And this right here, naturally, that's our glass. But the material on the inside, this is also similar color. So is this material right there. You can always go back to solid mode if you'd like to work on that a little bit more. Naturally, we know the camera, these faces need to be dark. Wonderful. Selecting those faces. Wonderful. Create a new material and assign. So you can see right there, it's already changing color, but this is supposed to be a darker color. Perfect. And then save that. We can even turn down the brightness a little bit because it's supposed to be that darker color. Perfect. And I think the eye has a more distinctive color. You can see the eye there of the camera. It's even more popping. So for one, let's extrude this a little bit, and with this entire object, let's set the origins to geometry. Tab in once again. So then we can bezel this, not by too much, just a little bit. And we want these faces right there. New material, assign new material. And right there, it's supposed to be more like a little glass. So let's put a glass right there, assign material. And with the roughness, turn that roughness down. How does that look? You know, it actually looks pretty damn good. If you want to improve this even more, what you can do is duplicate this, bring it forward just a little bit, select new material, assign new material, and let's add an emission. Let's zoom in. You can see right there, can add a little emission. We want this to be very subtle, however. Maybe just make it blue a little bit. So that's what it looks like. But we can turn that down even more. There's a certain amount of subtlety within it, and save that entire thing. This material, we need to remove that material right there. Perfect. That takes its place. Let's go to the back of our object. Let's see what we've got here. This needs to be changed to the base material also. These materials are also the base material, and this one is supposed to be like a black material. Perfect. I believe so. Yeah, there you go. It's a black material within, and it's not black the entire way. There's a little bit of orange inside, and then it becomes black. Kind of like what we have right there. Perfect. Now we've got our screen. So let's go to shader. With this, we need an image texture. Image texture. Let's connect the base color. Let's open up our files. This would be the image texture I'm using for now. Once we got that, then we can go to UV editing. That UV editing right there. Let's also add Control T, add in our texture coordinator and mapping. So if we go over to the UV area, also at the back of our object, don't forget we have this thing right here. This object on the inside, this needs to be changed to orange material also. Perfect. Let's go back to our image texture. So if you go into UV editor and you click into edit mode with our object on the right hand side, you go to UV at the top, unwrap, and unwrap base angles. Perfect. We can then scale this down, carry it across using G, Z, carry it across. On the right hand side we can switch to the render view. How is that looking? So it's actually flipped on the other side. So we might need to rotate this. So it might be our screen on the inside. We might need to rotate this. If we select that screen, we set origins to geometry, rotate this 180 degrees and bring this back. Perfect. Click number 1 and carry this along that side. Need to carry it along a little bit more. Just make sure that it is centered. That's pretty good actually. Now if we tab back in, we can scale this out just a little bit. And if we go into our shaders tab, we need to add an emission. Let's add our emission. Let's go to emissions to volume. Let's go strength to alpha. Actually, let's move that around. Let's move these around. Still want to have our color to base color. So I figured it out. What we need to do is to remove the principal BSDF. Perfect. There we go. It's a little bit too bright, as you can see. We also need to move this into the surface. Put the color into color. Perfect. Can bring these a little bit closer. And there you have it. So we can turn that color up if we wanted to. Actually, this way we can make some cool animations. Now, if we go into object mode, what we're actually going to do is we're going to tab in, duplicate this, and bring it very close to the other one. We don't want any light spillages. Separate, and then we can remove that one and create a new one. You can even turn that one down. If we go back into render view, that's what we should have. Perfect. Another thing also, because we created a new material, we created it within the boundaries of our objects. So it wasn't created outside, so it's actually included in the project. So the quickest animation we can actually do is we can control that emission right there. Quickest animation we can do is actually we can turn this down, press I, actually go right there with all of these, location, scale, rotation, move this up to around 60 frames, move the emission up, not too bright of course, that is we don't want the screen to be bleeding out, so probably around 7, maybe even 6.5. Perfect. And add another eye. Perfect to all of these, and let's see if that works. The only thing I'd say is we can probably move it down to around frame 40. Wonderful. So it doesn't need to take 60 frames to do. Even then, I still feel like it's a little bit too dark. Let's move that down to 5. Let's add eye again, eye to all of those. Perfect. And we can click on C, get back our image. So that's an animation, but also can render that image if we wanted to. With the camera, we can click on the camera, we can go to the output, and we can scale this output down, probably 1080 also. Perfect. Then we can carry that camera a little bit closer, scale this up just a little bit. Then we can always change these colors to our liking. But for now, we just work with that one. But I think these colors can be increased. Problem is it affects our object too much, and I don't want it to affect the object directly too much. So let's duplicate these, bring them back closer to that object, and turn up the brightness on these. Then we can see it from that perspective. And with this, we can go up to pivot point and change to median point, and then we can rotate this as we please. You know what? With these lights, we don't want them to be directly on our object. Not anymore. We want to move them to the side. If we do have anything directly on our object, should be further away. Should be further away, but also probably turn the emission down. We don't need it to be too bright. We don't need it to be too bright at all. You can see I don't like the way how this is shaded. I really don't. So let's go back to the shading tab. And it's mostly this one that's creating a bit of issue. So let's remove it. Let's bring that back to linear. Just keep it above the camera view right there. That in the most simplest way is our render. It's pretty good so far as well. So we can change the color as we prefer. Keep changing this color a little bit as you like. And that's actually not too bad. So it's up to you to set the colors as you prefer, but then you can think about animating it next. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it's been educational. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. Hope you've enjoyed the course. How has the course been? Has it been easy to follow? Is there anything that doesn't make sense? Or does it make sense in the simplest way to follow? Let me know what you think about the course. I hope you've enjoyed it. Really. Hope it's been educational. Hope this can help you to create some cool animation. And of course, you know, we got a light unit, but if you actually wanted to animate this a little bit, you could set it down, like probably right there. You could perhaps bring this down, and you can press I for location, I for rotation, I for scale. And then of course it wakes up around 40, the screen turns on. So at around 40, we need to have this up around there, rotated like that. Press I on those ones. Go to 60 frames. And then we want to just tilt this. Actually, go to 50 frames. Or actually, we can go to 45 frames. Tilt it to the right. Press I. Go to 50 frames. Tilt it to the left. Press I. And then around 50 frames, we can bring it directly back. Press I. Perfect. And save. And change, the start is at one frame. Change the end to 60 frames or 65 frames. Give some room. So that's what it'll look like. So even these frames, they're a little bit quick. So we can actually adjust these ones a little bit. Maybe even change that to 70 frames and change this one to 60. If we go into object view, that's what it looks like. Quick little animation right there for you. Perfect. Save that. Hope you've enjoyed this course. Hope it's been educational. Please leave a comment. Please leave some feedback. Please share your work with the community that we have here. Share your work online on Twitter, on Instagram as well. And thank you for watching. Thank you for participating in our course. Thank you for buying our course. And I can't wait to see you in the next course we create.